Hello everyone. Thank you for joining. We're gonna allow a couple of minutes for people to join. Thank you everyone joining. I can see I cannot see, but I can read some familiar faces in the attendance. So thank you everyone for coming. If it's your first time, thank you for joining this In Conversation with event. And if it's something you're doing regularly, welcome back. We're going to have fun for 1 hour. And today with us is Thibeli Malebo. Hello, Thibeli, how are you?
I'm good, and how are you? And,
I'm really
and
good. I'm
thanks for
excited.
and thanks for pronouncing my name correctly. I know it's a bit of like we were discussing. It's Thibeli. It's spelled Thibeli, but it's pronounced Thibeli. Yeah, South Sotho. The French are like South Sothos. They pronounce things differently to how they're spelled. So yeah, thank you for that.
Thibeli,
Yeah,
I've been
Thibeli.
doing some practice before we start, so I am happy that it paid off. Great. Okay, well, Thibeli, welcome. This for everyone joining. This is an in conversation with event in which what we do is we have a conversation with business continuity risk or resilience professional, and today we're going to be discussing many topics, but basically everything is going to be around Thibeli's perspective, and I'm going to read his career, his bio, so you get all to know him a little bit better, and so you get some context about his experience. I think it's going to give a little bit of light to what is going to be discussed later. So, Thibeli Malebo has spent more than 2 decades at Standard Bank, building a career across technology, risk, and business continuity and resilience. Today, he's Group Head of Business Resilience and leads non-financial risk for Group Real Estate Services. His experience includes helping protect staff and assets during the July 2021 unrest in South Africa, work that earned his team the BCI Africa Award for Continuity and Resilience in 2022. His experience also spans operational resilience at scale, including identifying critical business services, mapping technology and third-party dependencies, and using impact information to support better investment and risk decisions across the organization. His approach is practical and business-focused, connecting resilience to protecting people, ensuring the availability of critical services, and supporting an organization's ability to make timely decisions. He's also interested in how horizon scanning, third-party assurance, AI, and realistic scenario testing can strengthen preparedness. Thibeli, very exciting to have you here.
Thank you so much. I am also excited to be part of this conversation. Just something to point out that yes, I work for a particular organization, Bank, but for these purposes, it's Thibeli in his capacity. So nothing that I'm saying should be linked to Standard Bank, to my organization, but everything that I'm saying in my personal capacity. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Okay, fantastic. So let's start. Before I start with the questions, as you all know, everyone who's here, we're going to allow 10 minutes at the end for a Q&A. So write down whatever comes up to your mind in the conversation, or even write it in the chat as it happens, because we're going to allow some time at the end to open up the conversation for questions. So tell us a little bit about your journey. You started in IT, and you have gone into risk and resilience. How has that shaped your approach to resilience today?
Yeah, it's one of the many questions that are continuously being asked to say, how has your journey evolved? But one of the key things that I always talk about is let's understand the origins of resilience. And once you understand the origins of resilience, it makes it easy for one to understand how my career has spanned across. So the origin of resilience in my mind, through the research and the books that I've read, started during World War II. When they say, seriously? Yes, World War II. And the objective was that the, 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 okay, the country wanted to take a piece of land and protect it as best as they could by making sure they had enough ammunition. So just in time, having enough ammunition to protect the territory that you've taken. And as it fast forwarded or we move forward, then there was disaster recovery, which only looked at IT. So system failure, you go fetch your backup tapes and restore. And this is how my career of IT started, working at one of the big organizations in South Africa in the IT field where I was a novel engineer. I hope I'm not giving away my age there, but having to restore from backups. That was that was IT. And then business continuity came in. Business continuity then said, it's not just IT, it's people, processes, systems, and facilities, understanding how all these interact and work together. But even though they interact and work together, it's only around a function or a business area. Operational resilience comes in. And how operational comes in, for those perhaps who do not know, was that there was a huge outage in the UK, I think 2018 thereabouts, where Visa, MasterCard, all banks could not function. The regulator then said, it is important for all financial institutions to understand what could disrupt their services from the lens of a customer. So operational resilience comes in twofold: across the value chain, which is service-led, and it's no longer just silo-based, but service-based. So that's the evolution. Then through discussions, then you always have what is referred to as organizational resilience. So organizational resilience says it's not just technology, services, it's around understanding or having the foresight of what could impact you if you look at PESTEL model. So people, economic, social, technology, and all end. Having a view and understanding what could disrupt the business, number one, from a political front, economic, climate change, whatever, having proactive controls in place. So that in the unlikely event that the business is disrupted, you have proactive controls in place. So it's that ability to anticipate, have proactive controls in place. Sometimes things do go wrong, man, regardless. And it's around having that ability to respond and to recover. But most importantly, take those lessons learned and improve on your ability to anticipate. So for the technology experience that I've brought in, it's there. I use it all the time, but it has fast forwarded from being reactive to being proactive.
Uh-huh. And that proactiveness, how does it look like when you need to implement that in a large organization?
So it's always around linking this to the strategy of the organization.
Mhm.
Most organizations, what they want is to ensure that they can serve. Let's talk about financial institutions. Most financial institutions, they want their clients to be able to transact at any given point in time. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, there's a transaction deal, Hong Kong, New York. Those things must happen seamlessly. It's understanding what could disrupt those services so that the transaction doesn't happen. Because at the end of the day, we need to count the rand and cents. Oh, sorry, rand and cents, the dollars and pounds of what makes the company tick. It's all around revenue, growing the market, growing that share price. And resilience of proactiveness is around anticipating what could disrupt those services. Currently, Europe has a lot of wildfires. Understanding what causes those wildfires, its drought, its weather, having the proactiveness of wetting the grounds, if I can use those words. I was talking to a friend of mine who is in Netherlands, and he was saying, Thibeli, what we've done in Netherlands is that we could see helicopters taking water and scooping the grounds so that the grounds remain wet and not dry. By so doing, you're preventing the fires where possible. And if the fires do happen, they don't spread. So that proactiveness, that's how it comes into being. It's all around anticipating, and I'll go back to that, what could disrupt those services. But the one thing that I always find as risk practitioners is that we don't talk the business language. We always talk the risk language, risk terminologies. So to a point where when you talk to business, they don't understand what you say. So it's around converting the risk language into business language. Talk about the cost, not even the cost of not doing the business. Talk about the business benefits of being proactive, of having resilience in place. That changes the conversation. That allows you to be invited around the table.
Very interesting. Actually, I think that's the theme for the upcoming BCI World, which is now the theme. I know that is not return on investment, but returns on resilience, and that has to do with understanding resilience in business terms. Do you have any tip on this that we could all benefit from?
Yeah, I've got tips. I don't know which pocket do you want me to pull, or which tip.
Whatever you want.
So, if I let's look at the municipality. No, I don't want to use the word municipality. Local government structures. The local government structures, it is to ensure that I don't I don't want to use the South African terminology. I'm trying to find the normal terminology where people were like, oh, we can relate. So ordinary citizens, the role of the local government is to serve them. And how do they serve them? It is to ensure that if you want to go to a local government place, you can get the services regardless. The local government, it is to ensure that those services remain available. And for those services to remain available, not all services are critical. It's identifying what are those critical business services. The question is, how do you identify those critical business services? You then look at the client impact. You need to look at revenue generation. You need to look at regulatory impact. You need to look at reputational impact. If any of those 4 criteria or categories touch those, therefore it is important to then say, this is a critical service. Once you've identified a critical service, you then need to map the, let's call them enablers, for lack of a better word. It's technology, it's third parties, it's mapping the interconnections, interdependencies. And it is around the cyber, it is around the people, it's around doing your business continuity plans at the functional level, but linking them to the service. Once you have mapped those out, what you would then realize is that the output of that will tell you which areas are of concern or which risks must be prioritized first. As an example, technology, end of life, end of support. If end of life, end of support has been reached, the likelihood of that application going down increases, which means disruptions to a service. But previously, you looked at this thing in a silo. You didn't join the dots. So this gives you a view of connecting the dots at a service level. The other thing is, globally, we are being hit by, there's an increase of cyber attacks from third parties. So previously, we would just know who's our third party and fourth party and fifth party. And we would just say, give us your business continuity plans. And like, their tests, do they do them or not? Yeah. Now it's around understanding the information risk that they pose. Number one. Number two, how can they impact that service when they're disrupted? The data that they hold. SOC 2 requirements. How do these all come together? So operational resilience and proactive and thinking around this, when we talk to business people, it is important to talk around the opportunity that resilience brings to ensure that our reputation remains above board, to ensure that the share price can increase, to ensure that customers trust that the municipality will always be available to provide those services. Using the same things that I've said, but just turning it slightly different to say this is how resilience enables the organization to prosper. And once you start talking those languages, it's not about being asked, it's like, when can you sit around the table?
Yeah, very interesting. Okay, and once you have everyone in the business um, totally convinced and seeing it as an opportunity, as you mentioned, and then disruption hits, what do you personally focus on first?
Yeah. That's a tough one.
Hmm?
That's a tough one because depending on the output of all the different risk types that you put together, you would probably have a reg status in terms of telling you what's top priority. The
Mhm.
example that I used of end of life, end of support being old, it just makes it easier to say for the municipality or for the local government to ensure that our there's electricity and I can buy my electricity. These services remain available. This application enables this service. This application has reached its end of life, end of support. How much is required to upgrade, update that system? This is data-led. It's no longer who has the loudest room in the room. It helps in prioritizing because we know that if this application was to go down, these are the consequences thereof. Previously, I go to the business, I tell the business this needs to be upgraded. Why? Because this application is old. Why? Because it takes too long to recover. What's the return on investment? You're not talking about the return on investment. So it's using the same language, but changing it slightly different to talk about the return on investment. So what helps you to prioritize using operational resilience lens is the ability to see at a value chain looking at the different risks, which risks are of priority. And once we have the data that supports that, changes the conversation completely.
Totally.
Yeah, I hope that.
Okay. Yeah, totally. Um, and what happens because you're talking about this is data led, you know when the support is going to end, but what happens when there is a situation in which information is incomplete or is still changing? How do you make good decisions? Have you faced situations like that?
So the world does not remain stagnant. Everything changes all the time. Day one, day two, things change. I think it is important to make decisions based on the data that you have at that moment in time and the information that you have at that moment in time. Because tomorrow you can play back to say, based on the data that I had at this time, this is the decision that we took. It then takes away the emotional discussions because the discussions were data led. I hope that answers your question there. Because that for me, it's around using data in a way that helps decisions to be made. Operational
Yeah.
posture gives you that view.
Yeah, yeah. They also talk about these two types of decision makers in which some people make decisions are comfortable making decisions with incomplete information. They are faster and responding, and some people need the whole data set to move forward, which make them like do slower, make slower decisions, but maybe more complete. So these two types of decision making are good in some situations and or are bad in some other situations. So I really like that concept of data as like the enabler of the decisions and remove the emotional component of it. Even when you're judging a past decision, remove the emotion, like I should have done this, or because you're obviously biased by the new data set that you've got and you didn't have in the past, right?
Yeah.
So
In a crisis, it becomes a bit of a nuance and at times, and it also depends on the crisis. So if it's fast paced, evolving quickly, it's difficult to wait for the data to come. And this is when it is important to do those exercises and tests because the exercises based on the scenarios and the injects that are continuously thrown, it allows the crisis management teams or the senior executives or the executives in the room to make decisions because they have gone through these exercises. So muscle memory kicks in rather quickly. As opposed to your initial question to say, okay, this is how do I make this decision based on this? So the two types, when you said two types, I also want to support that to say that two types. It's the decision in growing the business and how the business changes. And then there could be a decision based on the crisis. And the decision based on the crisis is totally different to how the organization is going to grow.
And that actually links really well with my next question is how do you, in those kind of situations, high pressure, how do you balance people and business priorities?
Oh, again, there that will that will depend on the crisis. Let's put a scenario around the table. If the scenario is around a building that is burning because of a fire outside the building, the priority would be to safeguard the people, your assets. Those are your two driving priorities. Because without your people, you cannot recover your business. Without your assets, business cannot work there. So that's why it is important to prioritize those two based on the scenario that I've just shared. If it's a scenario that is only impacting data, it is important to understand what data and communicate with your stakeholders. And your stakeholders could include your regulator, your people, your employees, your clients, and so forth. Even in the first one, even in the first scenario, you still need to communicate with the regulator because you need to show the regulator that before everything else, your clients are important. I mean, your customers, sorry, your staff are important. Sorry. Your staff are important. So it's not, for me, if you look at us, it's scenario specific. But this is why it is important to do these multiple exercises. And at times, business don't understand, don't see the need of doing exercises. Last week, I was at the Business Continuity Institute Southern Africa chapter conference. And there was this company that came and did a scenario using play cards. At times, it's around getting in, even in an exco meeting. You say, guys, can you give me 10 minutes? Here's a set of cards I would like us to play. The first card says, okay, you're the COO, CIO, the other one CFO, other one CMO, all these Cs, they're all in the room. And the scenario says, there's fire outside the building. The CFO, what do you do? It's just making it easy. And the CFO says, oh, this card says I must do this. Am I going to do this? Can I do this? It's around changing and gamifying exercises to make them fluid, as opposed to waiting 2 years and 3 years, then the regulator. Take away these regulatory requirements, make them fun, but make it in a way that the business sees the business value. And that's where I will repeat myself, as risk practitioners, it's how we change and talk business language as opposed to risk language.
I mean, you don't need to convince me about doing realistic exercising and making them fun. I'm completely sold on that, obviously. But then about this scenario, the concept of picking out a scenario and making it useful. How do you make sure that that is not just a compliance exercise? Like, how do you truly make a scenario that is impactful and it changes the way an organization tackles resilience?
So before there was AI, what we used to do was that we would craft a scenario, do a bit of research. And when you talk about research, is that you talk to people in the business to understand what their risks are. Allow me just to go into a risk language a little bit. So you look at the risk control self-assessment, what risks are sitting there, what's in this risk register, and the impact that it would have on the scenario. You look at the political landscape, you look at the climate, environmental landscape, and then you bring all these different pieces together to craft the scenario. What that does, it makes the scenario as close to reality as possible, because these are risks that exist in the organization. Excuse me, and that's also on the horizon. If you look at the horizon outlook from the World Economic Forum, so those are things that you can see in the horizon. Over and above, it's saying we don't do risks in isolation. So the RCSAs, you don't do them in isolation. The risk register, they don't work in isolation. But this is how they all come together as part of the scenario planning. So that's how you bring it together. With AI, that research, that time spent, 3 months going, speaking, trying to find time in people's diaries, you can remove all that and spend 4 hours crafting the scenario on your laptop through Copilot, as an example. Because the Copilot, you've got information risk data, you've got cyber risk data, you've got facilities management data, you've got people risk data, and also you can include to say, please scan what's happening globally in terms of the risks that talk to environment, that talk to whatever, and you bring those under one scenario and run that scenario. So it's no longer just, doing the exercise for the fun of the exercise, but it's around evolving and making it close to reality as possible. Because these C's, the C's, let's call them C's, the C's, they are forward-looking, correct? They are seeing what they've got measures and acquisitions, as an example, that they need to meet. And they have a view of what's on the horizon, but just bringing it into the room and saying, if there is in Indonesia at the moment, there was earthquake. Okay, earthquake has hit Indonesia. Warnings have happened in terms of tsunamis. What are we going to do? Are we then going to say we're going to cancel the meeting, or we're going to have the meeting somewhere else? This is the beauty of what AI does. This is the beauty of why we do these exercises. It's around, and again, I'll sound like, at the risk of sounding like a broken record. It's around anticipating what could go wrong, having the right preventative controls in place. At times, you may have the best controls. Things go wrong. And when things go wrong, how do you respond and recover?
Awesome. And you were mentioning before identifying critical services. How do you make sure that you have everything locked? I mean, what is your process to identify the people, the system, the suppliers that can pose a threat or a risk? And how do you make sure that that is turned into something practical your team can work with?
Oh, through great difficulty. Through great difficulty. I think the approach that one needs to take, it's start, this old cliche, start at the beginning. So when you say this service is critical, linking it to those critical, the 4 criteria that I've mentioned. Let's say you use payroll as an example. Payroll is deemed as critical, okay? What are the systems that enable payroll? So you're dealing with the technology piece. For the payroll to run, are we dependent on third parties? Yes, we are dependent on third parties. These are the third parties, okay? For the payroll to run, who are the people? And this is essential staff that's referred to. Who are the essential staff? And the essential staff, it doesn't mean these are people only in HR. It could be people in finance. It could be people in HR. It could be people in technology. It could be people in operations. It could be people in compliance. All those people need to be identified because they enable that service to run. And then it's around, do we have, if we look at the applications, you have to look at the attributes as an example. The attribute says, do you have DR? Do you have early warning indicators? Is there a remedy system? And so forth. So you have to double click on those. Even when it comes to people, do you have succession planning? When it comes to to third parties, do you have BCM plans? Do you have an exit strategy? So all those things you have to start individually, right? And what one does then is, in isolation, it doesn't give you a picture, doesn't give you anything. And this is why BCM, we always worked in isolation and things did not really work. What operational resilience then says is that you have to bring them together to tell you which is your weakest point of failure. And another way is you have to go to the process engineers and and it takes time, this one takes time, so don't do this now, do this after. Process engineering will help you to draw the processes and then give you a view of the processes. And this is when you can identify your weakest link. Because once you have the weakest link, it's easier for you to then say, this is how my services will remain available.
So do you then take that weakest link and exercise around it so you can prove your point and make changes into that? Or does that work?
So it for me, hey, that's a nice, interesting curve question. But it is important that you ask the question. For me, it's around understanding what, not just the weakest link. Let me put it this way. It's not just understanding the weakest link. It's understanding what can disrupt the services within this entire value chain. You may have your strongest link being your third parties, but the supply chain of third parties, you don't know who. Do you have a view of your sixth party? Because if they are disrupted, therefore you'll be disrupted. And perhaps this is where DORA comes in, because DORA, Digital Operational Resilience Act that focuses on the EU, its primary focus is on third parties, and it's around understanding the value chain of the third parties. Because it then says, if you have the weakest link in the third party, what controls are you going to put in place to make sure that that third party is resilient so that you can provide your services? So I'm linking back to your question, but it doesn't mean you only have to look at your weakest link. Your strongest, your availability of services will remain available as strong as your entire value chain of services are strong.
Okay. And do you think, what do you think are like the biggest, not maybe weakest links, but the blind spots that tend to appear in large organizations?
Yeah. So the biggest blind spots are those blind spots that are small, if I can answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, are those small blind spots that one does not see. And the way to identify those, exercising and testing is one of them. And there are different types of exercising and testing. There's simulation, there's desktop, there's checklist, there's desktop rehearsal, and so forth. I guess for me, it's around putting people around the room, and this is what we've done, what I've previously done in past life. Putting people in the room and say, for you to execute, who are you dependent on? I'm dependent on this and this and this and that. Okay. For that to happen, who are you dependent on? And that and that and that. At times, you may be able to catch 80%. At times, you may be able to catch 70%. It's around understanding that everyone is on the same page, number one. Number two, do they all understand how they interact and work together? Number three, and I use the word interact, I did not use the word dependency deliberately, because that's a third piece. How are we all dependent on each other? The one thing that BCM did was me, myself, and I. The one thing that operational resilience is taking away is exactly that, me, myself, and I. But there's no I in teams or the word team. And operational resilience is exactly driving that. We need to work as a team to drive the strategic deliverables of the organization. That's it.
Totally. And you were talking about C-suite members before. And so what do you think, how do you involve them in exercising and taking part in these realistic scenarios? Can you involve them often? How do you involve them? How do you make sure that they are invested in that kind of exercising?
With great difficulty. I tell you now, with great difficulty. But you know what? There's a saying that never put a good crisis to waste. We've seen the geopolitical conflict that has happened throughout the world. And with that, it's one of the opportunities you can say we need to understand our value chain. We need to understand who our suppliers are. And for us to understand that, we need to have a conversation that talks about this. We need to have a conversation that looks at the broad landscape of political challenges. We need to understand the broad landscape when it comes to environmental issues, because we've seen now in Europe, as I've said, the wildfires, the impact that it has on everyone else. So it's around taking real events, putting them on the table, and say, how do we deal with this if it was to happen now? You don't have to wait for a day of crisis management. You can speak to your CRO and say to the CRO, can give me 5 minutes to be in the room, or plant the seed with your CRO. Say, I would like you to ask these 5 questions. The World Economic Forum says these are the top risks. I want you to ask the question, in the event of this, let's say, extreme weather event from climate change was to happen and to hit us, what has the CFO thought about? The head of people and culture or human resources, what have they thought about? So it's around just planting the seed, just for 5 minutes, you not being in the room, but taking real events that are happening and saying, if this was to happen, how are we going to manage this? And do you understand what your role is? Most importantly, do you understand your role?
Very good point. Okay. You were mentioning AI before, using AI for creating these scenarios to putting all the dots together of all the information. Do you see any other practical use of AI, or where do you see the most value from when using AI for resilience teams?
Yo, so AI is quite big and broad, né? And I know I mentioned AI, né? Um, and the way I see AI globally, it's like this child that was born 3 years ago, and they have grown in leaps and bounds, and they're almost running. They skip the walking part, they're almost running. And as and when this child learns to run, it is important that as organizations, we give this child guardrails to understand how to run faster and what can trip them as they run. That's the first thing. The second, and that talks to the governance piece. Basically, that analogy of mine talks to the governance piece. How do we govern these AIs? Do we need to govern these AIs? Yes, we do. Because if you look at the enterprise risk management, there's compliance data, there's legal risk data, there's people data, there's market data, there's country risk data, there's sovereignty data. All these data points are sitting everywhere else. Our role as the risk types, using your tool as an example to conduct scenarios, is to leverage on these different data points and pull a scenario together. But you need to understand exactly what type of outcome you want, So your prompting must be clear. Your prompting must be clear. So one uses your tool as an example. It's around bringing in what do you call this social events or social media platforms. What's being said? Who's going to respond? And how do they respond? So AI, for me, used in a right way, will help to plant the seed in a in a shorter term of events, as opposed to what I said to earlier on, where it took us 3 months, 3 months to craft the scenario. Now the scenario can be crafted quicker and the data will be accurate, but it is important that I prompt it correctly. So I remember last week again at this BCI conference, we were asked, in fact, I was in the panel about AI and we were talking about AI. And the question was similar to this, to say, do we find AI useful in business continuity and how do we find it useful? Again, I'll go back to the four things: ability to anticipate through data, through the use of AI. It makes it easy for you to anticipate what are the real events that can impact, that can disrupt your services. Through the use of AI, you can then prompt it to propose the controls. Propose being the right word. Sometimes things do go wrong. AI does hallucinate. And if it has hallucinated, how do you respond and recover? And that AI perhaps may tell you, or it may hallucinate even further. But take those lessons learned to improve on the ability to anticipate. So yes, I would say AI is important for us as risk types. And its importance must be governed by the governance processes that the organization has defined so that it doesn't go wrong. Somebody was saying to me last week that, and I don't know how true this is, so please don't quote me, that Alibaba, the company Alibaba, created an AI agent, and this AI agent went and started selling things to people which it wasn't governed to, which it wasn't programmed to do that. It was now, saying, "Oh, we can sell you this, we can do this, we can do that." Again, it's that governance, those guardrails, if they are not followed, we're going to experience. That's perhaps, I do not know. I don't know the details. I don't know if the story is real. But again, it is important to always have those guidelines. But what I will tell you is that I have seen a lot of research where AI agents have gone wrong. That happens. And that's on the increase.
Yes. Well, that's what's coming for now. And that's going to be my last question. But before I just tell you what my last question is, I'm going to ask the people in the audience to start typing whatever you want to know, because we're going to open up the Q&A. So if you have any questions you would like Thibeli to expand on something he said, or you're curious about something, please, this is the moment to type your questions in the chat or in the Q&A section here on Zoom. And in the meantime, we're going to wrap up with this question looking to the future. So what do you think is going to happen in the next 5 years, and what that's going to mean in terms of capability for resilience professionals, what they should be looking at, and what do you think is going to be more needed? What capability is going to be more needed in the next years?
5 years is too long. Time changes too quickly. Perhaps in the next 6 months, and then next 6 months after that, and so 18 months from now. What we as resilience practitioners need to do is to use AI to craft scenarios which can be shared with this. With you remember the example that I used earlier on, where we asked the CRO to ask the question, this is what's happening in the horizon. But you're using AI to craft that scenario. You're sending an email through a tool, whatever, through AI to the CE or the CFO or the CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, to say there was this there was this social media topic or article about our company. How are you managing that? Without waiting for an actual date. But it must be crafted in such a way that the CMO does not panic and think this is a real event. So you need to be responsible in doing that as well. I honestly think that that's the first thing that we need to do. So the use of AI, triggering quick responses. The second thing that we need to do is we need to change the language that we talk. We need to be more, I hate to use the word strategic, but we need to use business language. Language that invites us into the room. Language that invites us around the table. And that language must link to the vision and the strategy of that company. The example that I used about the local government around making sure that electricity is available. People, if people want to go to get a license, they can get the license. If you want to pay fines, you can pay fines. At any given point in time, you must be able to do that. If a company wants to transact with a company in Hong Kong and the other companies in New York, it doesn't matter about the time difference. The transactions need to happen. It's around saying, we will enable you to use our services at whatever time. What that does, it creates trust amongst the community. It helps to grow your market share. If you are a listed environment or company, organization, your share price will go up. And how you do that is around changing the conversations around risk language, but more business orientated on resilience. And perhaps the one challenge I want to leave us with is when we talk to the business, don't use the word resilient.
That's a good tip. Don't use it. The language is powerful. You're right.
Exactly. That's what we need to do.
Great. Well, Pablo has a question for you. He's asking, what form of scenario testing, for example, desktop, data checklist, do you find is the most effective within your organization?
Remember, I'm talking on my personal capacity. So yes, it all depends on the outcome that you're trying to get. Desktop, it says it's an easy one. We're in a room, the plan says this, let's walk through the plan. Scenario takes a bit of time to craft and pull together and to get people together. But what I've said here earlier on is that you can use a scenario using AI and send an email, but in a responsible manner to say, this is what's happening in Indonesia, sorry. If we were in the same boat, how would we deal with that? So that one would require a scenario. It all depends on the outcome. So the exercises vary, but it's all in what you want to get out of it. If you want people to understand the plans, desktop walkthrough, you can do that. If you want people to start be forward thinking, forward looking, having the ability to anticipate, and when things go wrong, respond quickly and recover quickly, scenario exercises are the best. Simulations are the best. I hope I've answered that question.
I think you have. Okay,
Thank you.
great. Well, we don't have more questions, but I do have something before we say goodbye to Thibeli. And it's an invitation to our next In Conversation event, which is happening in September. I'm gonna paste in the chat for everyone the link to register and quickly share my screen so you can see what we have in store. So we have invited Lisa Jones, who is going to join us September 23rd. And she's formerly she was working with Control Risks, and she's now founder and consultant at Black Girl. And we're going to be talking about leadership, more AI, and the human factor in this polycrisis world. So you're obviously welcome to join us. It will happen in 1 month. I just dropped you the link if you want to register for that event. And Thibeli, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a very pleasant conversation. I really loved all your insights and how just turning the way you see resilience and you talk about it and you convert into business terms and you take the data and to create experiences and exercises that are valuable. That was very insightful for us. So thank you for joining us today.
Only pleasure. Cheers. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone, and see you in the next one.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.